Hey besties, welcome back to my channel. It is your human Dutchy. Yeah. So I'm gender fluid. And let me tell you, no label has ever felt more accurate than that. Like, I feel so comfortable and confident in it, and I'm so glad that it sort of feels like everything has fallen into place. Now that I've realized my gender fluidity, everything feels right. Like there was a piece of me missing for a while, and now it just feels right. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I knew I was gender fluid, the signs from my childhood and early adulthood, I guess you could say, that really pointed towards my gender fluidity that I just did not pick up on, and my preferred pronouns and what I would like to be referred to going ahead. Yeah, it's just gonna be a deep dive really into my feelings and emotions, and yeah, I really want to share that with you if you are dealing with some gender identity crisis yourself, or just questioning your gender. Hopefully some of the things I talk about in this video you can relate to, or if not, hopefully it's just an informational piece for those of you who don't know much about being gender fluid or non-binary. And before we get right on into this video, I want to disclaim I am going to be speaking from an AFAB perspective, that is assigned female at birth, so I will be using a lot of feminine terminology to suit that throughout this video and explanation. So just so you know, not speaking as a whole, just speaking from an AFAB perspective. And another thing I want to cover right before we get into it is that there are three spectrums. So there is a gender spectrum, gender identity, gender expression, and sexuality. So they're all different. Some can relate, some don't have to, but I want to cover those before we get into it because I'm going to be speaking a lot about particularly gender expression and gender identity a lot in this video. Obviously, we all know of the sexuality spectrum, but gender isn't spoken about as much, especially not gender fluidity. So I want to do my best to explain it for anyone watching this that doesn't know about it. Okay, I want to go ahead and try to draw the three different spectrums for you. I think it's a lot easier to see rather than explain, or to do both. Let me just get Procreate up, lol. Okay, let me just draw this for you real quick and then I'll be back. Okay, so this is a really bad drawing, but this is sort of what I want to get across. So I don't know how well you can see this, but basically I've got sexuality, gender identity, and gender expression. So as we know, sexuality is on a spectrum itself, and it is on like if you search up the Kinsey scale, that's a much better representation of it, because obviously there are within sexuality people that have no sexual attraction or romantic attraction as well. So there's like a straight end and a homosexual end of this spectrum that I've drawn up here, and then there's people obviously that fall in between there, or people that are more over here or people more over here. Then we have gender identity. So basically with this, put simply, is you have your cis female and cis male on both ends, and then there's a spectrum in here, and people that are gender fluid, such as myself, the best way to explain it is we go all over the joint, back and forth, or some people sit more in the middle, or some people sit more here or more here, but it's fluid, okay? It changes. That's why it's called gender fluidity. And then we have gender expression with femininity and looking femme on this side, and masculinity on this side. And again, you can fall anywhere there, or you can be particularly feminine or particularly masculine, but this does not mean like you can be particularly masculine and still be gender fluid, or particularly feminine in how you express yourself, and neither. So that hopefully that helps. It's a bit of a mess, but yeah, you're welcome. Sexuality, who you're attracted to or who you're not attracted to. And that doesn't have to come into play with gender or gender expression. It can be something on its own, and for a lot of people it is. There are people that are homosexual that are very aware of their gender, and that is cis, AFAB, AMAB, whatever it is. Now, it's important to note the difference between gender identity and gender expression. Gender identity is how someone sees themselves. It is how they feel within oneself or about oneself. It is literally their gender identity is someone's internal sense and personal experience of gender, whereas gender expression or gender presentation relates to a person's behavior, mannerisms, interests, and appearance that are associated with gender in a particular cultural context, specifically with the categories of femininity and masculinity, but obviously that can waver. So as I mentioned previously, gender fluid people in the gender expression and gender identity area usually waver. They don't always sit in one spot or are particularly comfortable with one spot, their gender identity changes from day to day or minute to minute or hour to hour. That is how I feel in my experience anyway. But then there are some people who are gender fluid who are particularly on one end or particularly on the other, but not 100%. And that can change. And the ability for that to be fluid and for your gender to be fluid is what is known as gender fluidity. Now, the difference between that and non-binary is if we look at that gender identity scale, someone who is non-binary is off or out of that binary. So they don't relate to either one or somewhere there in particular. They are like off. So if I get my little graph back up, someone who is gender fluid goes like this. Someone who is non-binary might be up here or off here or up here. They're not on the binary, if that makes sense. I think it's also really important to remember that some people who identify as gender fluid are more comfortable with a particular spot on that spectrum. For me, for example, I mentioned that my gender is very fluid and it changes very rapidly from day to day, even from this morning to now, even from now till tonight. It will probably change how I feel within myself. But in saying that, I am very much happy and comfortable in the middle of that spectrum in saying that I float quite freely from feeling very masculine and like a man or a male to a woman. Like I float very much between those two, and I'm very comfortable dressing androgynously. That is where I fit and feel most comfortable. In saying this, many people who identify as gender fluid may very well find themselves not identifying with feeling most comfortable in one position, and they feel comfortable in all different sorts of positions on the spectrum. It's all about ebb and flow. Now, this brings me to my pronouns, my next point, and I'm super nervous about this, I won't lie, but the sense of comfort I get from all of you as a collective family, the Dutchy fam, I'm ready to speak about this and I'm ready to be open about it and have you all come on the journey with me. It's really exciting, really nice. And can I just say, before I get into the pronouns that I would like to be referred to as, can I just say a massive thank you for all of the love and support on the reel I posted on Instagram last week about being gender fluid and just being confused about my gender identity. Holy wow. It is such a wholesome feeling to have all of you give back to me when I'm going through this time with your support and your kind words and advice that I give out to you and have given to you for years or days or months, however long that you've been subscribed or have messaged me or, It is so nice. The love and support I felt from that reel and the comments and the messages that I got blew my mind. It was so lovely. It almost brought me to tears. It was so nice. So thank you so much for that. So yeah, I mentioned this before, but in terms of pronouns, I do feel like I fit somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. I go back and forth, up and down quite a bit. That's why I'm pretty happy with any and all pronouns. In saying this, I think I like she, they the most and would love to experiment with that, so I'll be putting that in all of my bios. But in the same time, I'm still comfy with she, her, and that's the beauty of being non-binary or being gender fluid. You can be okay with many pronouns, all pronouns, or only a couple. That's something I didn't know. I really didn't know that, and I feel silly for not knowing that and pretty ignorant, but I didn't know that you could be non-binary or be gender fluid and identify with many or all pronouns still. I'm still comfortable with she, her because I'm comfortable in myself and in my body most of the time as a woman, despite the dysphoria that I do experience, which I will talk about soon. Being called she or her does not feel uncomfortable to me, and I know that that's going to be easy for friends and family who know me as that. Even though I know that if I did want to be referred to as something else in particular, that they should accept that and do that. I think it is easy, and I'm happy for that to remain the same, and I don't feel uncomfortable being referred to as she or her. And as I am still comfortable within my femininity at times, that's fine. I just like other pronouns as well. Can I tell you, being referred to as they, it's so nice, it feels so right. I love it. I love they. Okay, so now that we've discussed pronouns and the different spectrums that I'm going to be touching on, so now that we've covered pronouns and the 3 different spectrums that I'm going to be mentioning, I wanted to take this video as an opportunity to share the thoughts and feelings, or signs, as you may want to call it, that I missed throughout my childhood and early adulthood, signs that I missed that pointed to my gender fluidity. And let me tell you before we get into it, there were some pretty clear signs that I just missed, and that's the thing, I played it off as just thinking I was tomboy, and that's okay. okay and that's so fine. Just the way I liked representing myself, my gender expression, if you will, by, you know, playing out on those bisexual stereotypes or women loving women, that sort of thing. But it ended up being clearly so much more than that. Also, throughout this video, you might find me using the terms non-binary and gender fluid interchangeably. Now, I know they don't mean the same thing, but I am also aware of the fact that a lot of gender fluid people use the term non-binary as it is more well known, and not everyone knows what gender fluid means. Non-binary is also an umbrella term to which gender fluid does fall under. I will be using those two interchangeably, but if you would like to know the difference, I will let you know. Okay, so non-binary can mean different things to different people, and it's really important that if someone comes out as non-binary to you or tells you that they're non-binary, you can always ask them what that means to them and what their preferred pronouns are, because they won't always be the same. But at its core, the non-binary identity is used to describe someone whose gender identity isn't exclusively male or female. Now, this differs from gender fluid in that gender fluidity refers to change over time in a person's gender expression or gender identity, or both. That change might be in expression but not identity, or in identity but not expression. And I think that's really important to remember. I really like the end of that definition because it's just so true. Some signs, let's get straight into it. First sign, I never felt cis. And this is a really weird feeling to express and explain, but I never felt cis. In my 25 years of life, I never felt cis, and I knew that, but I never introspected that, and I never thought more of it because I just thought I was a tomboy. I just thought it was part of my sexuality, when they're completely different things and can be completely different, separate entities, but I never looked into it. Let's talk about school for a second. Let's go back to primary school. So in primary school, I always felt out of place with the girls, with the ladies. Ugh, hate that, forgive me. I felt out of place. I always did. And it wasn't just because I was the weird kid, because I was a little bit of a weird only child. I won't lie. I'm a weird person, and I love that for me. But yeah, it wasn't just that. I always wanted to be picked for the sports team by the boys because I was faster and stronger than all the other girls, or at least I tried to express that and look that way. And I was a very sporty kid, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I always wanted to be picked and be on the team with the most boys, and, you know, be on the best team and the winning team because we were faster than everyone else, that sort of thing. And I don't really know if that's just a competitive thing, but always wanted to be with the boys. I always felt like I could relate more to boys, and that could come into the whole sexuality thing. But again, there are three spectrums that can be closely related for some people. Yeah, I felt like I had more guy friends. I hung out with a lot more guys. I played with a lot more guys after school, those sorts of things. And of course, wanting to play the dad in Mums and Dads. And again, that can be a sexuality thing, but for me, it was a sexuality thing and a gender identity thing and a gender expression thing for sure. For sure. In saying this, so I did identify a lot with guys and had guy friends and did all that guy stuff and really wanted to do that. But then I also identified with a lot of the things that girls do, which is like a sign that I am so gender fluid, okay? It wasn't just that I was very guy focused, identified with all of that. There were still things about being a girl that I identified with too, at times. As I got older, and this is one of the biggest things, but as I got older, I started to express myself gender expression wise in a more masculine way. And by that, I mean, as soon as I could go out, buy my own clothes and do my own shopping, straight to the men's section I went. See you, hello. So yeah, this masculine presentation really began to manifest in how I presented myself, and the clothes I would wear and the hats I would wear. You would barely ever catch me, even still now, not wearing a hat. Love wearing a hat, love wearing beanies. And that's probably why. It makes me look more androgynous. And something else I thought of today, hair up. Wear my hair up all the time. And I thought that was because my hair was annoying, and sometimes it does get annoying, but maybe it has more to do with how I want to look and express myself, subconsciously or consciously, I'm not sure, than I thought. And I do want to reiterate that presentation and gender identity, or gender expression and gender identity, are two separate entities, and they don't have to correlate, but they can, especially with people who are non-binary or gender fluid. Yes, and in saying this, as I got into high school, especially when I got into high school, I started realizing that I didn't identify with a lot of the things or a lot of the ways that females were meant to be presented, how their gender identity or gender expression was meant to be, i.e. wearing certain skirts, dresses, heels. Ugh, hated heels, still do. I hated how it made me look. I hated how it made me feel, but I did it because everyone was, and I wasn't mature enough at that point myself to challenge that ideal and to question why I was thinking that. Again, just thought I was a tomboy. And of course, little old me was just conforming to society's norms, haha, like a good girl. Another sign, the concept of feeling pretty or getting dolled up to go out for dinner or dolled up for the boys. No thanks. I was always like, why should I do that? Why do I need to do that? My personality is fly as fuck. I don't need to do this. Boys like me. I'm one of the boys, you know. That was the mentality a lot. I actually have memories of mum, and it made me so uncomfortable, and I remember this so strong. We'd be going out for dinner, and don't get me wrong, I would wear makeup, still wear makeup. I love wearing a little bit, that's fine. That doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. But what used to make me feel uncomfortable was mum being like, oh, come on, put on some lippy to go out for dinner. So put on some lipstick, like a bold pink or red color, or put on some lip gloss. And I never wanted to, and I never understood why. So, and I remember myself, I would like go back and be like, okay, just like to please mum. Sometimes I would do it and hate it. And sometimes I'd run back to the bathroom or run to my room and just like lick my lips and make it look like I put on lip gloss. Or I would just be like, oh, I couldn't find it. Okay, let's go. You know, didn't really put the two together that made me so uncomfortable. And why? I think it was mainly because I didn't want to look that feminine. I was happy with the way I looked, like done up enough or put together enough, but I didn't want to look so feminine with lip gloss or lipstick on. No, thank you. Ever since I can remember, even as a kid, my mum would not particularly dress me as a super feminine. Especially like as a baby and like as a toddler. Because obviously you're a kid, right? Like, I don't know, my parents didn't dress me like that. They dressed me in whatever. But it wasn't until I got a little bit older, like in primary school, where mum was wanting me to wear dresses and stuff like that. And you know, like that's fine. But yeah, my presentation after being able to dress myself has always leaned more towards like an androgynous sort of representation of myself. I'd say 90% of the time I dress pretty androgynously, whether that's on purpose or not. I usually just wear clothes that are quite androgynous. But in saying this, there's definitely days or nights, which I'm sure you've seen on my Instagram or seen on here. There's definitely times where I want to be more in touch with that feminine side of myself, or wear extra makeup, or wear like a fitted dress or fitted pants and a top. That's the whole thing of being gender fluid. Sometimes that makes me feel so alive and so comfortable, and I love that. And then other days it's like, why do I have boobs? Why do I have hips? Why do I have a booty? But yeah, most of the time the androgynous presentation or expression is where it's at for me. I also never knew, and now I can identify with it and see that I was, but I never knew I was experiencing gender dysphoria. And for the longest time, again, and this is pretty ignorant of me, I thought gender dysphoria was specific to transgender individuals. But gender dysphoria also affects people who are non-binary or people who are gender fluid. And I've, for the longest time, had days where I hate my boobs, don't want them, cut them off. I want this top to look better, I want it to look flatter, and I don't even have big boobs, so that's a massive indication. Like, I can flatten a lot of things, but there are days where I just want a top to look a certain way. I want it to look more masculine. I want it to look how it looks on my boyfriend or my guy friends. Again, so many signs that I just can see so clearly now, and I just didn't, and that's okay. I guess, yeah, in high school you think that girls are meant to look a certain way, and there's certain clothes that you're meant to wear, or dresses, or outfits, and I just never wanted to. Never wanted to accentuate parts of my femininity more than I needed to, i.e. my boobs, my chest area, my stomach, my waist, my hips, my butt. No thanks, didn't want to. And I guess that was more for the purposes of gender expression rather than extreme gender dysphoria, because it wasn't so much that I wanted to be a guy, I just wanted to look like them, and that's the difference. If you're questioning your gender versus being transgender. But in saying that, I definitely do and have experienced gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria and that feeling of just wanting to look like a guy have definitely come into play, and I have definitely experienced and do experience both. And as I said before, then I have days where I love my boobs and I love who I am as a woman, and I love my body and my curves and my thicker thighs. Thick thighs save lives, am I right? And my booty and how it looks in certain jeans. But then there's days where I hate how it looks in certain pants, where I want to look more masc and not have a booty. You know, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, but that is gender fluidity to me, and that is why I've come to the conclusion of that, because it fits so well. It fits how I feel so well, and that is so refreshing and nice to feel. And I'm so glad I get to share this with you. I've only got 2 more signs, but something else that really stood out to me, and I made a TikTok about this before, was girls who I was attracted to, or friends, girlfriends, or just random girls out at like festivals or parties or nightclubs telling me I looked better or I could pull off a particular outfit better than another cis het guy or a cis guy. The euphoria I got from that, are you kidding me? And still do. Like, oh, chef's kiss, I still do. How did I not know? Can anyone relate to that? And not to toot my own horn, thank you, but yes, a few girls have said that in my time. And it doesn't get old. It's so, it feels so good. I love it. Also, I have always been very attracted to non-binary and androgynous presenting people. And again, I just thought that was part of my bisexuality. And it definitely is. But I always adored people that came out as non-binary or gender fluid, and I was like, oh, I want that. And I don't know if I want to be with that or if I want to be that. Turns out it was both. But, oh yes, gender non-conforming people, non-binary people, gender fluid people, they hit different. They just hit different. And again, just thought it was part of my sexuality, which it definitely is. But again, it was more than that. Yes, my friends, that is, hi. Bridget Lundy Payne, for example, want to be them, but also want to be with them, if I could. If I was single. So that pretty much brings me to the end of this super open and honest video. I'm sure there are more signs, and as more sort of signs and revelations come to light, I'm sure I'll share them with all of you on my socials, on TikTok and Instagram especially, because I'm going to be posting a lot more like short and sharp reels and TikToks on it, because you guys seem to really, really enjoy that. But yeah. I hope this video helps, whether you are also struggling with your gender identity. I want you to know it is okay. It's not something you need to rush, and you are so very valid. And if you're not and you just enjoyed this or learned something new, then you are so very welcome. I love you all so much. Don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss more videos like this. And yeah, give it a thumbs up if you thought it was super informative and you could relate, or you just like me. And yeah, that is it. I love you all so much, and I'll see you in my next one.